Romeo and Juliet, the single most famous love story of all time. But we won't be talking about the original play for this video. Of course, a story as iconic as Romeo and Juliet will inevitably receive many different adaptations, and for this video, I'll be tackling a lesser known version that reworks the classic tale into a family-friendly animated musical. Okay? Oh, and in this movie, the cast of Romeo and Juliet are portrayed as seals. Wait, what? Okay, this is a rather weird and random direction. I mean, is there a stranger choice for the characters to be depicted as? Okay, I stand corrected. The movie itself is titled Romeo and Juliet Sealed with a Kiss. Ha! Get it? It's because they're all seals. Ha 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 ha. This movie was directed by Phil Nibelink. For those of you who don't know, Phil was a former animator at Disney, having worked on a couple of films such as The Fox and the Hound, The Black Cauldron, The Great Mouse Detective, and even Who Framed Roger Rabbit. And outside of Disney, he was a director for An American Tail, Fireball Goes West, and We're Back, A Dinosaur Story. However, at some point, Phil Nibelink grew tired of working in big industry animation, and so he founded his own independent production company with his wife, called Phil Nibelink Productions. Yeah, real creative name there, guys. From there, Phil Nibelink would go on to make 3 animated movies, one of them of course being Romeo and Juliet, Sealed with a Kiss. Oh, and get this, he animated the entire movie all by himself. Yup, he spent a total of 4.5 years working on this project, using nothing but a Wacom tablet, Flash and Moho software. But hey, considering his track record and with all this creative freedom, surely he can pull this off, right? Yeah, let's just get on with the review, shall we? So, the plot to Romeo and Juliet, Sealed with a Kiss, is of course about the 2 feuding families, the Montagues and the Capulets, and the 2 star-crossed lovers that come from each of them, named Romeo and Juliet. Surprisingly, the movie actually follows most of the same story beats from the original play, except obviously this version is more sugar-coated and simplified with its narrative and themes in order to be more suitable for a much younger demographic. For example, in this version of the tale, there is a happy ending where Romeo and Juliet actually live. Plus, songs are used to propel the plot forward. Although, there were still some odd choices made to the story that doesn't really work in the movie's favor. For one, the feud between the Montagues and the Capulets barely plays a role in the story. While it is acknowledged, it's not the main conflict Romeo and Juliet face in their relationship. Instead, it's this character, who is known as simply the Prince, who is the main obstacle for our romantic leads, as he wants to marry Juliet. While there was a character in the original play who did want to marry Juliet, it was mostly just a side plot. However, in this movie, the Prince is the main force trying to drive Romeo and Juliet apart, as he's the one who banishes Romeo for quote-unquote stealing his girl, and he's even the main reason Juliet drinks the potion in order to appear dead, as he's forcing her to marry him. And yet the movie still uses the all or punish speech from the original play, that blames the deaths of Romeo and Juliet on the feud between their families, even though, again, the feud itself didn't contribute much to the central conflict. The feud between the Montagues and the Capulets has so little impact on the outcome of the story that this movie might as well not have been an adaptation of Romeo and Juliet, but instead a new love story between 2 seals and a villainous love rival. Another aspect of this movie's story that doesn't work is the relationship between Romeo and Juliet, as it was too underdeveloped. Now I know this sounds like a weird critique to make, considering that the couple didn't have much chemistry in the original play either, and the fact that this is a kids movie. However, in this movie, Romeo and Juliet specifically talk about how much they love each other for who they are.
I love you for who you are. I love you for who you are.
Even though there aren't any moments where the 2 of them actually get to properly know each other and form a connection, but instead it's all told but not shown, resulting in there being no chemistry between them. Although even a simple romance between 2 characters can still be genuinely adorable with great chemistry. However, that's not the case with Romeo and Juliet in this movie. And while we're on the subject of Romeo and Juliet, there's a massive elephant, or rather elephant seal in the room that needs to be addressed. How old are these two? Whereas in the original story, Romeo and Juliet were in their early teens. However, in this movie, they appear to be little kids. While their age is never specified in the movie itself, the fact that they're both much smaller compared to all the other seals in this movie implies that they're much younger. Heck, Juliet's father certainly acts as if she's a child.
Juliet, it's past your bedtime. Juliet, don't make me ground you again.
I'm generally not too big on child characters actually dating each other, but at least in other media, it's kept pretty innocent. However, this movie goes overboard with the romantic aspect of Romeo and Juliet's relationship, and there's even some implied sexual moments between them. It just gets really uncomfortable seeing little kids act this way. Also, if Juliet is actually a child, then that would make the clearly adult prince a pedophile for wanting to marry her, which is downright disturbing. I think the biggest problem with this movie's story is that there are a handful of scenes filled with nothing but random nonsense and low-grade humor that only serve to pad out the movie's runtime. I think instead of a filler, all of that time could have instead been used to develop Romeo and Juliet's relationship to justify all those times they say they love each other for who they are. Also, the feud between the Montagues and the Capulets could have played a bigger role in this film's central conflict to justify this movie being an adaptation of Romeo and Juliet. All in all, the story and writing in this movie is an absolute mess. Alright, time to talk about this movie's animation. Now, the most important thing to take into consideration when it comes to the animation in this movie is that it was all done by one man working with a small budget. Because of this, I can forgive some of the errors that are inevitable considering the circumstances. The character animation is just fluid enough, even if there are some bits of choppy movements here and there. However, there was no sense of weight to this animation, and the physics are just all over the place. Although the best aspect of the animation are these painted backgrounds, as they were gorgeous. I like the exaggerated cartoony art style for the character designs, even if they are a bit too simple. Although, the only real issue here is that Romeo and Juliet look too childlike. Yeah, let's not kid ourselves, this movie's animation is definitely not up to par with any of the other big-name studio animated films. Still, I gotta commend Phil Nibbling for animating an entire movie all by himself, which is not an easy task by any means, and the end result was pretty decent overall. Alright, now it's time to discuss the characters of this movie. There isn't much to say about Romeo and Juliet themselves, as they're both generic lead characters whose personalities are non-existent. Both Mercutio and Benvolio were obnoxious comic reliefs. So much of the movie's runtime was wasted on Mercutio telling terrible jokes, most of which are just him quoting a bunch of different Shakespeare plays.
Oh, Benvolio. I knew him well.
To be or not to be? That is the question.
Oh, and what is his initial reaction to finding out his best friend is supposedly dead? Making a lame joke out of it, of course.
Ooh, this party looks dead.
Jeez, isn't he such a charming character? Benvolio doesn't fare too much better, as not only is his voice annoying,
He's definitely not to be.
but he's mostly just used for unfunny eating jokes. Friar Lawrence does have a slight charm to his character, even though the majority of the jokes he delivers falls flat. The prince was nothing more than a one-dimensional villain, and him being a pedophile in a kids movie is kind of crossing the line. And finally, there's Kissy the Kissing Fish, who's voiced by none other than Phil Nibbling's daughter. Apparently all of her lines were improvised, and Phil thought they were just so hilarious they just had to put them in the movie. Now, while this sounds like wholesome fatherly love, this unfortunately wasn't the best decision for the movie itself, as everything the character says comes across as completely random, and the voice acting itself wasn't the best.
You know, I don't like the ocean. It's too wet.
The character herself isn't all that great, as she just pops in and out randomly and serves no purpose to the story. She's also quite inconsistent. For example, in one scene, she defends Romeo and Juliet amongst a crowd of other people scorning their relationship. But in the very next scene she's in, she says that Romeo and Juliet shouldn't be together because one's a Capulet and the other's a Montague. But then suddenly she's back to being fully supportive of their relationship for the rest of the movie. So yeah, it's confusing. Kissy was just as annoying as Mercutio and Benvolio, but of course, this isn't anything against the child voicing her, so don't send any hate towards her. All of this was just a well-meaning, yet misguided decision made by a loving father. And now, onwards to the movie soundtrack. All of the movie's background music is made up of tracks from the public domain, which is a given with low-budget animated films. It works just fine in some parts of the movie, but there are inevitably some moments where the music doesn't quite fit the scene it's used in. So to balance things out, there are also a handful of original songs in this movie. However, there was one major issue, and that is, they all suck. Now, I couldn't find the names for most of these songs, so bear with me. The first song is where Romeo sings to his friends about wanting to find true love, but it's mostly just sing-talking, with not an ounce of energy in the vocals.
I need a girl who will be true. Someone to swim with in, you know, the ocean blue. I wanna find a girl that's right for me.
There's this slow jazz love song that Mercutio sings to help Romeo and Juliet get together, and it was awful.
Love is in the air.
And then there is the love song between Romeo and Juliet. And it is a weird one when it comes to the visuals, which shows the two of them floating in space. The music and vocals have a dreamy tone that comes across as dull and boring. And in the song, they refer to each other as their lucky star. And no, not the anime, unfortunately. I have no idea what that phrase has to do with the feelings of love. Also, there are several times where they say, I love you for who you are, even though, again, at no point does the movie show the audience why they love each other. They could have easily listed the reasons why they love each other in the lyrics, but instead, the song just states their surface level attraction for each other. As for the villain song, it's just a generic jazz number where the prince goes on about how hot he is.
Ooh, baby, baby, he's got style, he's got style. Ooh, baby, baby.
It is just really mediocre. Friar Lawrence gets two songs, and they're both awful. In the first song, he's trying to convince Juliet to drink the potion, and it's just more sing-talking.
Drink this potion before you're wed. You go to sleep, but they think you're dead.
In a nutshell, it's just a second-hand poor unfortunate souls. And then there's Dinner Time, which is just another mediocre, how do you do, fellow kids rap number.
Come on, Sharky, you big ugly whale. Don't you want to bite my nice sturdy tail?
Okay, so the last song I want to mention has gotta be the most bizarre one of the bunch. So in this scene, Romeo is sitting on the island he has been banished to, depressed over the fact that he might never see his love ever again. And then Kissy pops into the scene, and tries to cheer him up by singing, Twinkle, twinkle, little star? What?
Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are.
Okay, this is obviously yet another excuse for Phil Nibblewing to show everyone just how cute his little girl is. Although, this song sequence comes completely out of nowhere and serves no purpose. I mean, it's literally Twinkle Little Star. This is just so strange and random. Okay, that's it. I'm done here. Time to wrap up this review. Romeo and Juliet Sealed with a Kiss is such a bizarre mess of a movie. While the animation is pretty nice considering that it was all done by one man, there were also a cluster of blunders that led to this movie's downfall. The story and writing were abysmal, the characters are bland and obnoxious, and the songs were horrendous. Although, most of all, this movie is just downright weird. I could see this being a guilty pleasure type of movie, as the ridiculously odd execution of each and every moment can be entertaining. As for the target audience, I would recommend Romeo and Juliet over this movie as a family-friendly version of the Shakespeare play, but I guess there's still no harm in showing this to kids, even if they'll most likely remember this as a fever dream. While I respect Phil Nibblewing for creating something out of pure passion, it was also the movie's undoing, as several decisions that led to all these massive flaws were made because it was something that he wanted, rather than what will work for the movie itself. Collaboration and alterations from your original vision is necessary in order to get the best result possible. That's why the best independent animations out there are created by a whole team of creative minds. And that was my review of Romeo and Juliet Sealed with a Kiss. If you enjoyed this video, then be sure to give it a like and comment. Also, subscribe to my channel and hit the bell for notifications. I would also like to give a shout out to my $10 Patreon, John Wallazix. If you too would also like a shout out in my videos, or just want to help support the channel, then head over to my Patreon. Well, I got nothing else to say, so see ya.